Hey, thank you for joining us and welcome to Sunrise. I'm Nelta Igwe.
And I'm Alero Edu as usual. It's a beautiful
As usual?
Saturday. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still Alero Edu. I've not changed my name yet. And it's the last Saturday of the month of May. And COVID is still ravaging the whole world.
Yes, indeed. COVID is still
About 9,000 cases in Nigeria now. Those are the ones that we know because testing isn't still going on like the NCDC would have wished.
But they've actually increased testing. As you said, maybe it's not as much as they would have wished because, as they say, it's quite expensive. I was talking to one of the frontline workers, and he was telling us how much each test costs. Well, he says they're not doing the normal one. Well, sort of confirming what the Commissioner for Health in Lagos was talking about.
Yeah.
And they're not doing the normal test. They want to be sure, because according to them, we know our infrastructure. So let's be sure what we are doing.
Yeah.
Before I'll say, this is Alero, then she comes out and says, no, I'm not Alero, I am Maria. But be that as it may, I like the fact that a lot of Nigerians haven't lost hope. Yeah, things may not be as they ought to be, but always see that resilience in Nigerians, that determination that no matter what, I'm going to get there. But I like to say that determination should not just be about you getting there. It should also be about your neighbor getting there. I shouldn't be so determined to get there, to make it, to survive, that Alero, I don't care whether Alero makes it or survives. The thinking shouldn't just be about me. I mean, what our guest last week talked about, Nigerians are thinking, but it's selfish thinking.
Yeah.
It should be selfless thinking. And the funny thing is, selfless thinking will also include you.
Think about us, not me.
Not me, indeed.
Us.
None of that. But
Yesterday was Inauguration Day, what used to be called Democracy Day. And everybody's talking about, so 5 years in power, what has this government achieved? Well, keep your gunpowder dry. We're going to be looking at that in detail in the course of today's program, and you can, of course, throw in your own 2 bits via Twitter, via email, whichever one you decide to use. I'm sure you all have opinions as to how this government has done in the last 5 years.
yeah, I actually was reading a document that's about over 30 pages of their government's achievement. But as we've always said, it's more, let's look at how institutions are being built, not just about individuals. Because
That is the
individuals
most
will
important.
pass, but institutions would remain.
Yeah.
And all of that.
And this lockdown between states, you heard that Anambra State had to go and block the Niger Bridge in the course of the week because Nigerians still will not do as they're told. Don't carry this. I mean, they keep telling us this virus does not have legs. We carry it around. So stay in one place. Don't go from one state to another.
Alero,
But we're still managing.
Alero, people are moving. They say when there is no demand, when there is no market, illegality would end. When there is no demand for an illegal product, that process of producing that illegal product will end. The reason why these people who are moving are still moving joyfully so is because some people are supporting them. And these are the people that are supposed to be
allowing them through.
They're allowing them through. And someone who just got into town was telling me how at every stop they pay 5,000 naira. But I let her check. If
Law
at the end of the
enforcement.
month, if I work for you for like 30 days, at the end of the month, I'm getting like 50 to 70,000 naira. But in the space of 1 hour, 10 cars pass, I make 50,000 naira. Alero, do you think I'll stop them?
No.
Thank you. Menu.
Okay. As we said in our chit-chat, we'll be looking at the gains of democracy. That's how we're going to open today's program.
And then we'll look at the new public procurement guidelines.
Then the flood outlook for 2020, well, the rains are beginning to come. What kind of English is that?
Well, the rains are, they're not beginning, they are here.
Not like we were expecting.
Yeah.
From what we were told earlier in the year, that it's going to be heavy this year, it's going to be a lot of rain.
If you notice, anyway, we'll talk about it. Then we'll look at reproductive health and the COVID-19.
And then World Milk Day. What's that all about?
I hope I can get a glass of milk at the end of today. And of course, we'll end as usual with the artist of the week. Promises to be quite interesting. So make yourself comfortable. We will be back in a moment and be a part of the conversation. See you soon.
Welcome back. Now let's get the show on the road. Yesterday marked what used to be called Democracy Day because it marked the end of, well, the beginning of democracy in Nigeria after many years of military intervention. Even though May 29th is no longer called Democracy Day, it is now called Inauguration Day. So we've had unbroken democracy for 21 years. It's quite apt for us to look at how we have fared in this democracy in the last 21 years. That is since 1999, when the military handed over to a civilian government headed by former General Olusegun Obasanjo. To help us look at this, it's my pleasure to welcome a legal practitioner, Anthony Ebe. Good morning.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
And joining us from Abuja will be Obinnaya Uruakpa, a public and international affairs analyst. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, you look happy enough. Are you happy because it is the day after Inauguration Day?
Yes, I am happy. I always look on the brighter side of life.
Good for you. Well, since I'm with you, let me start with you then. So 21 years unbroken of democracy. I mean, in your mind, how have we fared in 21 years? Government of the people, for the people, by the people. Do you think this kind of governance, way of governing, is apt for our country, for our circumstance?
Thank you very much, Alero. It's open to debate, and I like the fact that you quoted Abraham Lincoln, government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Usually what lawyers do, I'm happy you have a legal practitioner in the house, is to query every situation. So we want to query government of the people. Has the government been of the people, really? For the people. The governments we've had over the years, have they been for the people? By the people? Have the people's votes counted? Have the people been included? Has there been widespread inclusiveness? Those are issues we may need to trash in the course of this discourse. But I'll tell you that, thank God, we are alive. That's even the beginning. We are still one nation. There are a few nations who have had issues in the past 21 years. Now, I think it was MKO Abiola that said, if you spend 20 years learning how to be mad, how many years will you use to practice it? Now, we are on the eve of our 60th birthday. We've been on this journey since 1960, when the Union Jack was lowered. At the time the colonial masters handed over the reins of power to us, we began to see some patterns. Now, we said we wanted to get the colonial masters out, but as a student of literature and international politics, I'll be quick to submit to you that we ended up having what I call neo-colonialists taking over the reins of power. So we moved from frying pan to fire. And I will also submit that it's not just about those who have held positional leadership. Even those of us who have been followers have been part of this challenge. A people get the leadership they deserve. We also have played certain roles in the way we have elected people. Yes, you can say that there is issue of political education and awareness, how much our people are actually aware about what politics is, about what democracy is. that having been said, the fact remains that those who have had the responsibility of holding the knife and the yam and dispensing the dividends of democracy have questions to answer.
Okay, Obinna, questions to answer. Anthony, you were nodding your head when Obinna was talking about the processes so far.
Yes. And I think I like that tripartite definition of democracy. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But I think the fulcrum around which everything revolves in democracy is that by the people. Has the government in Nigeria for the past 21 years been determined by the people? And that calls to question our electoral process.
Are you going to answer that question?
I will.
Okay.
I will attempt to answer it. That calls to question the electoral process. And it is, to my mind, the center of all of democracy, everywhere, and particularly in Nigeria. If the electoral process can become credible, everything we talk about concerning the gains of democracy will begin to fall into place. And until that happens, we'll just be on a merry-go-round.
Are you implying that there have not been any gains?
There have been gains, but we could have made much more reasonable progress.
Okay, let's enumerate some of those gains that you say they are.
Well, one of the gains, if you ask me, is that for whatever reason that we can marshal here, we are beginning to feel that somehow the ordinary Nigerian can become something in government. Unlike during the military era when you had to be in uniform to be anything. So to that extent, we have been able to make some progress. But take that out of the equation and I am lost for what else to see us again in the past 21 years.
Yeah, but
and the reason is still the electoral process.
yeah, but even in becoming someone, as you put it,
Yes.
There's plenty of I can't even find the word. The process, as you say, makes it a very rigorous exercise.
Yes.
For
Tedious.
even that nobody
Yes.
to become somebody.
Yes.
The things he has to do, the things he has to go through
Yes.
to become that somebody
Yes.
because he wants to go into politics
Yes.
is the very reason that puts many good people out of that ring.
Yes, and that's exactly why I'm talking about the political process, the electoral process particularly. You want to interrogate the question, why should I feel obligated to obey anybody when I think that that fellow stole my mandate? And that is one area where the politicians are missing the point terribly. Now, it's simple. I am supposed to determine who rules me. You sit in your closet one way or another and steal that mandate. And you turn around and want me to call you Honorable, Excellency, whatever other superlatives you want to add to your name. And you expect me to obey. And let me tell you how terribly this is impacting on the Nigerian generally. Because the electoral process is not credible, the leaders are not seen, or the rulers, I always prefer to call them rulers because that's who they really are not seen as leaders. And you don't want to follow the one you don't think ought to be leading you anyway. And each time there is an election cycle, everything about our national life is paused. Particularly, I'll talk about my own little jurisdiction, which is the judiciary. As soon as an electoral cycle is ended, nearly 50 or 60% of the judges across the courts in Nigeria, courts of record, are drawn and made members, chairmen, and whatever other titles you want to give them of election petition panels. And that puts paid to all matters pending before those courts. And that means our business life grinds to a halt because you can't ventilate any grievance in court The judge is not sitting, the court is not sitting. There's no alternative to it. Now, what happened this last electoral cycle was particularly pathetic. Just when the courts were beginning, the judges were beginning to return to their courts, the COVID-19 lockdown started. So for nearly 1 year, nothing commercial has happened in our courtrooms. Very sad for our economy. It impacts, look at what is happening to the Naira. You can also trace it to that root. Look at what is happening. Look at the institutions. They are all suffering because of this, our electoral process.
Let me take it back to Obinna. Obinna, he spoke earlier about having to respect someone who you know didn't get there by correct, in quotes, means, and how you should obey him and respect him when you know exactly how he got there. How can we ensure that it is those who are going to do right by us, the people, who actually get these positions so that we can respect them? And a lot of Nigerians do not obey the law because they think whoever has made the law or whoever is at the helm of affairs does not deserve their respect enough for them to do as he says. So if we get the right people up there, obviously we're building a better society because we will then respect that person and obey what he says.
Thank you, Alero. John Maxwell once said that leadership is influence. My people will tell you that the reason a dog follows a man with a big tummy is if he doesn't do one, he will do the other. So let's bring it closer home to where everybody will understand this. Let's call a spade. People are no fools. We've been here for 60 years. I'll give you an example. My father was a lecturer, God rest his soul. In 1993, all the lecturers in Albany College of Education, let's say almost all, picked up their voter's card and queued up. You know what it takes to get lecturers to go out, leave the academic work, and go out to queue up with all the hustle and bustle, and voted. We were tracking the results on a screen. That was Humphrey Moses' time, only to end up with an annulment. I don't know if my dad voted again.
Obinna, if you don't mind, we'll just have to interrupt you here, but we'll come back to pick it up from that point where the lecturers came out to vote. Are they still voting? Will they come out to vote? Or are they even educating others about the voting process in Nigeria? But we'll look at that in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us and welcome back. We've been joined by Mr. Dakbo Akinyosun, a legal practitioner. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
But before we come to you, Obinna was talking about what his father and his colleagues had to go through in elections that led to an annulment. That was in 1993, the June 12th. I was going to say 2012. I'm sorry. So, Obinna, you were talking about what your father and his colleagues went through in that election that went on to an annulment, and after that, you're not sure whether they voted again. Why do you think they've not voted after that?
Now, I like the fact that you picked it up from there. It's about trust. There's a trust deficit in the system. The people have been told several things, and they've seen other things happen. We've had situations where campaigners have come to campaign and say, well, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do that. They disappear after the elections and return 4 years after to tell us another story. Yes, there are bright spots in the firmament. We've seen a few persons do great work, try their best, efforts have been seen. We've seen it since 1999. We've seen the Obasanjo administration, the Yar'Adua administration, the Jonathan administration. We've seen citizen participation. We've also seen the present administration. We've seen infrastructure at certain levels. But like my brother that was said, to whom much is given, much is expected. for a nation that has generated so much inflow from the monocultural products we've been running, which is oil. Even with the pandemic, are we going to use the pandemic as an excuse? What happened to savings over the years? And I do not cast aspersions at the present government. What did we do? Between 1999 and 2015, we had spent over $10 billion on independent power projects. Did we hit the mark? South Africa, with a population of not more than 55 million, has over 45,000 megawatts. We're still grappling between 3,000 and 7,000. What has happened to the power sector? So how do you want us to trust? I'm an MSME. I'm a student of politics. I run my own business. We pay taxes. The question is, when we pay taxes, the average person wants to believe that the taxes have actually worked for him. So even when we give out the indices and the figures that we have achieved so much, the average person on the streets wants to see that impact his pocket, impact his welfare. He wants to go to hospital and be able to get health care. But where are we today? That having been said, the fact remains that, like the Chinese will say, the best time to plant a tree, like I will always say, was 20 years ago. The next best time to plant it is now. Despite what happened to my father, I am still a participant in politics, but I have even been a victim. You go contest an election, and they tell you the result 7 a.m. when the election is supposed to start at 1 p.m., and they tell you the result was written last night. And this was written by a certain cabal. And I've seen it happen from 2006, and I still see a repeat of it. You still see a situation where even on your channel's report last night in the news, a woman bought a form for her, contributed $7 million for her husband to buy a form for governorship in Edo State for $21 million. Where does that happen? So when you take $21 million for governorship election, where do you want us to get the money from? Then you're encouraging us to go and steal. So even as we fight anti-corruption, we need to also engage the political parties to help the anti-corruption mantra of this government to work. And then the government needs to also face the people, because it's about participation, about the political association, recruitment, and so on. When you allow a political party, and I believe even the president himself queried the last time they asked him to pay so much to pick up a form. What you have just done is you have excluded the people who would have done so much work, which was what Alero was addressing. How do you want a lecturer to buy a form for 21 million? Or you've not heard that Samuel Gu was once a lecturer. You've not heard a few other people were once lecturers or were teachers. Shagari was a grade 2 or grade 3 teacher. He became a president. How would Shagari have become a president? So what would happen is that Shagari would have opened himself up, and then the wrong kinds of people would give him the money to buy the form. Then how do you fight corruption when those people begin to demand a return on investment? I believe that the issue of corruption in Nigeria is even systemic. So you have the not too young to run bill that was passed because a few young people came together and fought, which is also why we, the citizens, must keep our eyes open. The price wise men pay for not being vigilant is to be ruled by fools, a philosopher once said. And my people will tell you, if you're not close to the fire, your young will never rose quickly.
Obinna, do hear you, but let's get back here and get Dapo to weigh in on all that you've put out there. Dapo, Obinna is very passionate about what he's talking about. And all in all, he's pointed to one thing: the leadership selection process, the electoral process, trust deficit. And yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but the process of getting to the end of the tunnel doesn't look too good. And I saw you were really writing.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's made some very interesting points. And some of it I can see he's passionate and maybe somewhat angry about the way the nation is going. And I share his passion and his anger on many of the points. However, we also need to closely examine and ask ourselves, what is the younger generation doing? He mentioned the cost of buying election forms. How much was the form when Shagari bought the form? I don't know. But was it cheaper at that time than it is today, comparatively? It's a difficult analysis. But one thing is certain: campaigning for any election is expensive. If you don't have funds, you will not be able to campaign. That is just simply the logistics of going
do
all
we
over.
have to make it so expensive that many good people cannot join the fray?
No, I'm
Make
talking
it
about
out of reach of the...
I'm talking about
you know.
the realistic expenses of running a campaign. you have to do a television advert, for instance, coming on channels will cost me money. If people do
Town
not
hall
hear
meetings.
what I want to do, I will not get that opportunity. Putting up a paid advert in a newspaper is expensive. Going from town to town, city to city, visiting people, being known is an expensive process.
Posters.
So you cannot run away from the fact that it is an expensive process anywhere in the world. Now, what is the place of technology that is evolving? But as it was constituted, it definitely cannot be run by the poor. But what can the poor do to make themselves heard is the situation. I have been around the campaign trail before, and you find that the way we campaign, even in the southern part of the country, differs slightly from what you find in the north. On the south, particularly the southwest, you'll find a lot of people demanding from you, give us our money. Give us money before we vote for you, because they now see it as a right. On the other hand, in other parts of the country, in the north, they will give you their own money to say, we believe in you. So right from the get-go, we sometimes, by our orientation today, have already shortchanged ourselves. And we need to begin to reorient ourselves. Trust deficit. Of course, many politicians come up today without even a plan. They just come up with beautiful photographs and say, vote for me. Nobody, I mean, I remember in the elections he mentioned, when it was UPN and SDP, UPN, I mean, Awolowo and Shagari,
Yes.
they had a manifesto. I remember that Awolowo, when he came out, there was a song he sang, they had a plan of what they would do when they get to office. Today, they don't tell you what they want to do. Until the APC was formed again and they came up with some things that they say, we will do when we get into office. Nobody was talking about what you want to do in office again. It was just a simple matter of that, I have the best posters, vote me. And until we begin to ask people, what do you want to go and do when you go into office? What is the party manifesto? What is this party stand? What is the ideology of this party? Are you socialist? Are you Republican? What are you going to do? But we have to ask those questions ourselves today and begin to fight. He spoke about national savings. National savings has been, there's been no savings. That has been clear. That is clear. So whatever is being done now has to be built. And I like the way he put it that well. From the best time to start it is now. To all intents and purposes, this government has done very well in some things. They have not done up to expectation in some things. And we just have to give it to where it is. There are many areas where things are changing every day. Is a rapidly moving ball. But we have to keep our eyes on the ball. But generally speaking, on the average, I think 21 years of democracy is an improvement. At least we've seen party change in election now. A ruling party, a party in the majority lost an election. That is a major thing anywhere in the world. And no matter the rough edges, no matter the roughening of the edges, we, the common people, have to stand firm and begin to ask questions and say, we will not do it this way again. But until the mass of people start asking questions and rejecting the money theology, money philosophy, that if you give me money, I will vote for you, we're going to be going around in circles.
Okay. Tony.
Yes.
In all of this, the people
Yes.
seems to be the most important person.
Yes.
Let's say the persons. Are the people involved like they should be? Government of the people?
By the people.
Is it of the people in Nigeria? Is it by the people in Nigeria? Are the people,
Is it for the people?
are we involved like we should be? Do we understand what the issues are? Because I think if we did, we wouldn't be asking for money.
Yes.
But then that arises from the trust issue, which is
trust
underlying,
deficit
which
that
is
not been
underlying
talked
all
about.
of this, because
Yes.
the people see all of them as thieves. They've stolen our money anyway, so let's get our own share of the money. It's our money. So all of this is going on. How do we get the people to understand what this is all about? I mean, fully understand, to be able to partake like they should.
You see, the situation appears to be very murky. Now, the people who are supposed to be, by every standard of measure, the center of democracy, have been sidelined completely. And until the electoral process returns that power to the people, we will just be on a merry-go-round. That's the simple truth. Now, I want to make it very clear. I am completely a Nigerian. I don't belong to any political party. Some people will say I'm not a card-carrying member, but that in Nigeria means completely different thing. You can be a member but not carrying a card. For me, I'm neither a member nor a card-carrying member. So when I speak as a concerned Nigerian. Now, everything about Nigeria touches on that government by the people. The institutions are comatose. Why? Because when a few persons sit down in their closets and determine who becomes what, when it is time to share the spoils of war, it is also those few who will get it. And that's why you keep talking about recycling. And let me be clear on this. Politicians in Nigeria don't know that Nigerians are not quite as stupid as they think. Nigerians may not be as wise as the politicians, but they are not quite as stupid as the politicians think. And that is one area where, until we address, we will not be able to flow together. Now, the lesson from what that was submitted on a short while ago is that one party seems to be saying to itself, the other party made a mistake in letting us win an election when they were in office. We will never let that happen. And that is what is killing the electoral process. We can't venture into this fray by letting the contestants determine the outcome of the battle. We will determine it before they go into the fray. Because we don't want to take any chances like the other people did. And that is wrong.
Well, we did determine in the last elections. Because
we did not.
They were taken aback when they lost. They didn't believe that they could lose.
We didn't learn anything, and we didn't determine anything.
Didn't we?
We didn't.
We did not vote for this party that is ruling now?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
And that is being very frank. Now, the question you'll ask yourself is, come back to even what you saw on television alone. Because I know that the coverage was quite extensive the last time. If you were sitting in the comfort of your living room and you had to determine the result of the elections just based on what you saw even on television alone, would you not have annulled that election? Would you not have ordered the parties to go back to the starting block and take that race all over again? And it comes back to what I talked about, the electoral process, the judicial process, our economic life, the institutions, and our general life as Nigerian. All these things go back to the same root. Until the electoral process is credible, we cannot get everybody who can contribute intellectually to come on board to deal with the institutions. Okay. And as long as the institutions don't take root and begin to grow, we will just be on this merry-go-round of whoever is there determines who gets what and how much of what.
Doc, that thing of blaming the politicians, blaming the leadership, those who have gotten into office, seem to be like a recurring decimal, as they say. Case in point, I always tell this story anytime we're talking this democracy and politics. A young man, he was in the studio here, young lawyer, said he used to play football with his colleagues, and they were like, you should go for this office, you should go for this office. In the next election, you should go, we'll be behind you. So he went and did campaign and everything. When he came to his own to say, okay, I have gone, I've got the nomination, I've got the ticket, so you guys, so it's almost here, so you're going to vote. You know what they told him? Bros.
How far?
How far? You know that thing. This
Ashola.
that man that you want to contact came and so you have to. So at the end of the day,
Oh dear.
the people here still bear the blame. Tony said the people have not learnt a lesson. How do we get by getting the people to weigh into this democratic process instead of sitting back to cast blame? Own the process, indeed. How do we do that?
The first thing we need to do is get involved. You see, before now, I, like many other Nigerians, was an armchair critic. I would just look and complain and grumble and say, oh, this thing is not working, these leaders are corrupt, but we never really got involved in it. Until you begin, I think there's a passage that says, unless you leave the boat, you cannot walk on water. Until you take a step into the waters, you really cannot change the process. How many of us on election day actually go out to vote? We complain that the voting centers are too far from my house, there's too much difficulty in getting there, and that simple process of even going out to vote, we miss the opportunity, and then we come back again and grumble 3 years later, they haven't done anything. But until we begin to actually get involved, first of all, in voting, then backtrack.
Even if the votes don't count.
You see, it is more difficult to manipulate the process if people have actually come out to vote. It is when there are a lot of unused voters' cards and thumbprint reader, things that should have been used up by you that are not used, are the things that make it easier to manipulate. But if I've used it, they can't change my fingerprint. But if the papers are there blank, then somebody else can thumbprint on it. So that makes our not being involved is the first problem. Secondly, in the campaigns, we don't go out to ask questions. We just see the convoys driving by, the carnivals, they wave at us. But
They don't give us the opportunity to ask questions.
no, but you see, election campaigns are now moving to a situation where you are getting town hall meetings. We're getting more television interviews. Do we get involved in even phoning and actually ask questions? Do we mobilize our own people around us and say, hey guys, like you just said, your friend comes to you and all he's asking you for is, what do I get when you get into office?
Okay, just hold your thoughts there. We'll need to go on a quick break. We'll come back. We'll pick it up from that point. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still looking at the gains of democracy. And at this point, we're talking about the people. You were talking about the owning the process, being a part of it. Emmanuel Ayewa says the electoral process has not evolved enough. Less than 40% of registered voters actually vote. Less than 15% of citizens select their leaders. Votes don't count anyway. Too many technicalities, excessive election tribunal efforts, too expensive, blatant rigging. Does that summarize everything you were?
Well, it kind of agrees with what I said earlier, that if we do not go out and vote, you are also lending your hand to rigging of elections. So until we also start taking the blame of not getting involved in it, then we will not move forward. Secondly, as was said earlier, there is also no consequence for bad behavior until we start sending people to prison for sitting in an office that he should not have been. Because what just happens is that the judgment is given, the man gets removed from office, but all the actions he has taken while illegally or wrongfully occupying that office
Still stand.
is allowed to stand. But there should be some sort of reversal. There should be some kind of penalizing the fact that you got into that place wrongly at all, so that people will not be so desperate to get into that office. We can begin to see a bit of it taking off now, in that EFCC is calling people to account for deeds they did 15, 20 years ago. That means that those of you who are there today know that eventually, someday, somehow, sometime, you will be called, you may be called to account.
Yes.
But unless that is sustained, if it dies after this administration again, then all the gains we have gotten will also be lost.
Okay.
Because every time there's always someone who wants to make money.
Okay. Obinna, let's look at the issue of electoral malpractices. Even with the various amendments to the electoral law, we still saw a number of misdeeds during the last elections. We saw people carting away ballot boxes and all that, and nothing happened. If we did something about malpractice, which seems to be quite rampant, would we not have a cleaner and more credible system?
You're right, Alero, and I'm a parent. I have 2 children, Olako and Eina. You don't let Olako, my daughter, do something. She's older, she's about 10. The brother is about 8. If Eina, my son, watches to see what Olako does, and she does something wrong, and you, the parent, do nothing, next time Eina will do ×2 what Olako has done. It's simple. That was just addressed it. And I like the fact that Anthony is angrier than myself. In fact, he's so angry that he does not believe election held. Having been a victim of election malpractice myself, you don't want to be in my position. I've been a victim. My role model, Sam Adeyemi, came out one day and said, guys, we cannot afford to stay away and not get involved. So we got involved, 2006, did all the campaigns. On the eve of the election, or in fact, on the morning of the election, I got a phone call. Bros, I think they wrote the result last night. I'm still investigating that matter several years after. Have I given up? No, I haven't. I'm still involved because someone wrote a book and said, because I'm involved. Now, reason being that I understand history. My dad was a history lecturer, so I understand the evolutionary process of history. We are a developing nation. We are about to clock 60. America is over several years, and so we have taken democracy, which dates back to the Athenians, to the Greeks, and so on. So we need to understand that we will evolve. It's not a microwave thing. Now, that having been said, the citizens need to participate. I also was asked to bring money to ensure that the delegates were well taken care of. And I was just working and taking salary from an organization where I resigned to come contest. So we need to galvanize mobilization of the people. We need to galvanize political education and awareness. Now, National Rotation Agency and all of the agencies need to get involved. The civil society organizations need to participate. The traditional rulers, the subnationals need to participate. We cannot leave this in for government. Now that all the single product we have allowed ourselves to focus on, when we used to be #1 in cocoa, #1 in yam, #1 in cassava. As far back as 1971, Nigeria, the groundnut pyramids, groundnut market in Kano was the size of the FCT. We let all of that go bad because oil came. So we moved from oil boom to oil doom. That having been said, it don't happen, like my people will say on the streets. Now, what do we do next? We can't keep bemoaning our fate. We as a people, civil society organizations, should get involved. I think it was the Secretary of Government of the Federation on one of the days that he was speaking at the Presidential Task Force briefings that happen on every weekday that said that even this issue of procurement processes that we say we should do opening of bids and so on, things may still have happened, and then you come and watch, you just be watching a movie. It comes down to attitudinal change, and painfully, our people are even expecting, for example, the Presidential Task Force, people are expecting a lot from them because those are the ones we are seeing. So we see someone like the Secretary of Government of the Federation who wakes up and gives out a circular and says, everybody fall in line, do the right thing. And then a lot of opprobrium is thrown at him. But that having been said, you must do it. If you want to be popular, then you go sell ice cream. So the fact remains that a few of us need to get up, be counted, wear your jersey and play your wing, but make sure we score the goal. What is the goal we need to score as a nation? We must develop our nation. I carry the green passport. I say that all the time. I don't want to be a second-class citizen elsewhere where my country may be called a shithole. Now, as much as possible, we need to understand this about systems. If we refuse to come together and build the systems, and if you work in INEC, if you work in any of those organizations, you owe us a responsibility to stand up to be counted. We have seen members of the EFCC reject a bribe by some nationals from some other countries. So the people need to have an attitudinal change, which I think the SGF also mentioned in one of the PTF trainings. Now, I belong to some civil society organizations myself, Stay Safe Niger, and a few other organizations that I have found, Society of Igbo Professionals. The people need to take ownership. It's our country. we cannot keep blaming people. My people say, if you are not careful, they'll carry you and pass your father's compound.
We have
Stand
to
up
start
to be
winding
counted.
down
It's
now.
our country. We keep complaining. If you want to run to Canada, you can run. I don't want to run to anywhere. It's my country, and I stay here, and we solve this problem.
Okay, Obinna, we must start winding down now, and we've only got 3 minutes to do that. And in making your closing statements, please let me just read what Oluwaseun Raji says. Since 1999, our democracy has been more of red than green. Unemployment, underemployment, poverty on the rise. Democratic institutions have been capped for the rich. When the people have been impoverished, voting business becomes the order of the day. Voting becomes a business. Your closing statements, please. Yes, sir. Tony.
Nigerians, step out. Step up. Get into the action mode and take charge of the electoral process. So you can determine who leads you. You can determine which way you go. You can determine which way your children will go.
Assuming
as their
that
future.
your vote counts. That one.
So what you need to do is make your vote count.
How?
What you need to do is come out and vote. What you need to do is get involved in the election. Many of us don't even know our local government chairman. Many of us do not know how he emerged. You have to get out at the primary level. Go and join politics at the ward level. Be a voice to be reckoned with. That is the only way you're going to start and get this thing right.
Okay. Obinna.
It's not all doom. There's still light at the end of the tunnel. We would, like Mahatma Gandhi would say, be the change you want to see. Every person should get involved. A 21-year-old is already an adult. Let's stand up to be counted. Nigeria is our country. We will make it, like Pastor Ina Omako would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have been speaking the gains of democracy, and we had with us 2 legal practitioners, Dakbo Akin Oshun and Anthony Ebe, who were in our studios in Lagos, as well as Obinna Uruakba, who is a public and international affairs analyst, who joined us from our studio in Abuja. Yes. Thank you all very much for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
And happy Inauguration Day to all of you. Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. Alera, I couldn't help but, I just couldn't help it. I was actually enjoying the music.
I know.
And I was hoping the producers
We just play on.
would just play on. I mean,
We have plenty of things to talk about.
I love that guy. But then let's talk a bit of money. You know this thing about service to the people, management of public resources, and procurement. That's one of the things we're going to be looking at today. And just before we do that, let me read this and tie it in. Professor Imonokai Enakena says, this 21 years has created the hypochondria for stealing than any period in our political history because of poverty in the land. This gave rise to political jobbers, career criminals, and political bandits. He says, if we don't sort out the economy, we will be walking backwards. That's from Professor Imonoha Enakena. Hope I pronounce your name well, sir. But what he has said, in a way, ties into our conversation next, where we're looking at this new directive or guidelines issued by the Bureau of Public Procurement and the Public and Private Development Center to ministries, departments, and agencies to guide the conduct of public procurement activities of public funds spent in the service of the nation. How is this exactly working, and what is it supposed to be about?
Regarding the COVID-19
Especially as regards the COVID-19 pandemic. But to help us understand this, we have joining us from our Abuja studio, Engineer Isaiah Yusufu, Head Agric and Water Resources, and Ifoma Onyebuchi, Public Program Director, PPDC. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me start with the lady. Ifoma, can you just tell us a bit about this new guidelines that were issued to the MDAs?
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. And so the new guideline is a way to ensure that even in the midst of the pandemic and all the disruptions that the pandemic has caused, both economically and also socially, that procurement is going on, and that even in line with the Public Procurement Act 2007, that the ministries, departments, and agencies are maintaining the principles of accountability, transparency, and value for money. So the Bureau of Public Procurement, BPP, issued a guideline a few weeks ago to all procuring entities who are procuring essential goods and services during this COVID-19 to make sure that all the information, procurement information that cuts across all the 5 stages of procurement spectrum are publicly available, that they are proactively put out. And what that means is those data, those procurement information are put out there and published on the Nigerian Open Contracting Portal, which is a system, just a system that publishes procurement information across the procurement value chain. And what that means is that you and I, we are just talking about democracy and why people should participate. And the key cross of democracy is inclusion and participation. And civil society is also a key aspect of our democratization. And what that means is that this information will be openly available for anyone, as far as you're Nigerian, you're out of this country, and you have interest in how much government is utilizing in providing goods and services for your community, that you have access to those information in a timely fashion, and then you can use that to track the hospitals, the schools, the palliatives. And this is very critical at this particular time that everybody has gone into hibernation. You know, when this public service sector, because of the lockdown, everybody is at home, working from home. And, you know, it will be very difficult if you send FOI requests, and it probably may take days or weeks. And meanwhile, you need this information to know how much or what is meant for you and your family or your community. So following a paper-based approach might not work for you, depending on the urgency of the information and what you want to use it for. But the portal, the Open Contracting Portal, enables the data published in time, in real time, for us people, for us citizens, to follow the information, follow the money, follow the procurement process, and follow the intended service delivery. So that is what the guideline is supposed to achieve if eventually the MDAs that received the guideline obey the guidelines. So
the key word there is if they obey the guideline. But we'll take a moment, then we'll come back, we'll look at the breakdown of this guideline. How does it work? Would the data be readily available? Is it going to extend beyond the COVID-19 pandemic and all that? But we'll look at all of that in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're looking at the new public procurement guidelines released by the BPP and to the MDAs for them to publish their data, especially within this COVID-19 pandemic era, to publish their data on their websites and on the Nigeria Open Contracting Portal. Earlier we had Ifeoma Ibuji tell us what that entire guideline and process is all about. But Engineer Yesufu, in implementing this, tell us about the NOCO utility. How does it work?
Thank you very much. The NOCOPO, which is the Nigeria Open Contracting Portal, it's basically just about making procurement information available to the public and to stakeholders. And it's to encourage participation by the citizens, civil societies, because if everyone has access to this information, they'll be able to track government projects and know whether they are being implemented, whether they're actually located where they're supposed to be, and all that. So the whole idea of this NOCOPO is just to make the whole process transparent, let people be aware of what the government is doing. And so that's basically what NOCOPO is all about. And it's the information, it's used it's just for people to be aware. People can track what is going on and know how many projects are being implemented within their domain or their territory. And MDAs, that's ministries, departments, and agencies, are expected to upload all their procurement information on that portal. The portal has been in existence prior to COVID-19. It's not about COVID-19. It was there before COVID-19. But what the guideline is now is we are encouraging all MDAs to now put their COVID-19 procurements also into that portal so that everyone will be aware of how much government has expended in carrying out all these COVID-19 procurement. So it's not about COVID-19. Even after the COVID-19, the portal will still be in existence. As a matter of fact, it's interesting to note that when Nigeria developed this portal in 2018, it was put into a competition amongst 40 other countries, and our portal emerged as the most innovative globally. So it's something that we got an award for. It's a very robust system, and it's being used presently. Thank you.
You are of the Agric and Water Resources Ministry. Is your ministry making use of this yet? Is your ministry doing as you have been told by the BPP?
No, I'm a staff of the Bureau of Public Procurement, but I'm the head of Agric and Water Resources. So I handle the ministries in that sector.
Okay, so
I'm not a staff of the ministry. I'm a staff of the Bureau of Public Procurement.
So you are the ones supervising all of this. How much compliance has there been since these guidelines went out?
Well, so far we've had mainly not to. If you recall, a lot of MDAs were put on some kind of suspension because of the COVID-19, but there were some frontline ministries, MDAs, that have been carrying out procurements, particularly the Ministry of Environment, NCDC, and all that. So we've interfaced with them, and they've brought their information, and by next week, it's going to be published on the Nokopo portal.
How can civil society organizations like yours help in this endeavor?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. And so, in line with supporting government in all initiatives, I think that the role of civil societies are very crucial in ensuring compliance. Even though civil societies are not regulators and probably may not be able to enforce, but I know that we play a critical role in being the linkages between government and the governed. And also ensuring, like he said, this guideline has been issued to MDAs. The data are not really generated by the Bureau, but this has to be generated from the ministry, departments, and agencies. And we know that compliance is key. Without compliance, we cannot have this information out there for people to use. And civil societies, in line with their roles, can find pressure points to make sure that the MDAs are put on their toes. And this could be in form of advocacy. For example, civil societies can carry out strategic advocacy, monitoring who is complying with the guideline. Because if you look at the guideline, for example, you will see there's already interagency collaboration and synergy between the Bureau and other regulatory agencies and financial institutions to make sure that whomever that does not comply with these guidelines will not have any funds released for them in that particular fiscal year. So our role is to ensure that people comply. And if there is if an MDA received money without complying, it's a red flag that we can flag up to say, why are these people receiving funds for capital projects? Meanwhile, their data are not available for people to use. And also another role that civil societies can play is to use the data. Remember that these are all procurement data from budget to implementation. And as I'm talking to you now, we have over 700 MDAs in Nigeria. But if you currently look at the portal, I think it's only 16 MDAs that have been publishing over the past 3 years that the portal has been in existence. So there's a whole lot of work to do, which advocacy is one of them. But also realizing that we as civil societies cannot do it alone. In a country of population of over 200 people, there's need for awareness creation. Many people don't know about this portal, and we need some sort of social engineering. We need people to talk about this. We need it to be a public discourse and debate, something that should be continuously discussed by people, because procurement, like we know, is the #1 risk in government. So it's our topmost priority as a country, as a people, to make sure that people, the MDAs who are carrying out these public services, are complying with the portal. And there's need for awareness creation, which the civil societies can do using their platforms, using their social media platforms. And another thing that we could also do is to actually use the data. We know the categories of the people we have, looking at our demography. Not everybody have the tech skill or are tech savvy, or even have the internet access to be able to go to this portal, because it's a digital tool, right? But civil societies can actually mine this data set and then break them down in a way that different people can make sense of it. If it is to looking at, we have over 250 languages, breaking it down to a way that people can relate to it, link it to how it concerns me, because we as a people, if you don't actually see how this data here, data can be, very technical. If you don't see the link between this data that have been put out there and how it affects your welfare, how it affects your access to education, your access to healthcare, you probably might not want to be interested in. But when you see this later and see the figures that are being called millions of dollars, millions of nairas that are supposed to be used to provide services for you, I think you will be motivated to get involved. And these are the things that CSOs can do. Mobilize people, just like what a typical example is what the Public and Private Development Center is doing. We started recruiting what we call community-based monitors. And these people are drawn from different communities where these projects are being implemented. And because nothing is as beautiful as your own person telling you that this is our house, or this is our school.
Exactly. Okay. You're really passionate about this, but let's swing this to Yusufu and ask this question, especially because the Freedom of Information Act of 2011, there are those who argue that it's not really being complied with as much as it should. There's not much information out there. I've just attempted to open the NOCOPO site on the BPP platform to see how much data there is. So, Yusufu, is there a plan to ensure that compliance is followed through? If you compare with the FOI of 2011 and how much people are complying with that law, is there a plan to ensure that this is followed through? And what's the consequence if it is not done?
Absolutely, absolutely. In how things work, when there is no enforcement, people tend to slide into old habits and old practices. What we intend to do, part of my colleague here mentioned earlier on, one of the strategies that the Bureau is doing is that we're working in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Finance and particularly and the Office of the Accountant General Federation. And one of the things there, in the guidelines, one of the spots there is the fact that if MDAs don't comply with the guidelines, they may not be able to get funding, access money for their procurement. So and everybody needs to implement their procurement. So if they have that, if that challenge is in there, if that bottleneck is there, if that limitation is there, then it will also help them. It will compel them rather to proceed and comply with the guideline. That's one. Two, we're also aware that, the Presidential Task Force is also monitoring the COVID-19 program nationwide. And, even the ICPC is also there to also monitor the expenditures and all that, how people are implementing these things. So you see that there's a lot of collaboration from the government side to ensure that people comply with the guidelines and that these procurements carried out specifically related to COVID-19 are done in line with the guidelines. We all know that globally, this pandemic has hit every country around the world. And every country is struggling to, to redefine a lot of things. As they say, there's a new normal now, and things can't continue the way they used to be. Everybody all over the world is bracing up, and Nigeria cannot afford to remain the way we have been. We're also moving forward. So you see there are checks in the system to ensure that everyone complies. And the Bureau we also have a surveillance that we are going to roll out to be sure that people are following the guidelines. We have pre and post audits that we'll be conducting, along with surveillance that we do regularly to be sure that people comply with the guidelines. But more importantly, they won't have access to fund their projects if they don't follow these guidelines. You know that right now there's a lot of, because of the pandemic, government revenue has dwindled. So government is prioritizing their projects. And that funding is critical. And we need to be sure that people are complying with all these things so that we maximize every money, every kobo that government is generating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Engineer Isaiah Isufu, Head Agric and Water Resources in the BPP, and the former Onyebuchi Program Director of the PPDC, looking at the new public procurement guidelines. If you go to nocopo.bpp.gov.ng, you get more details. You can get there and get data on how the MDAs are spending their funds, especially as it regards the pandemic and in this season. So thank you so much. Sunrise will be back in a moment. Please just stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. This is still Sunrise, and we're going to be looking at the flood outlook for this year. The Nigeria Hydrological Survey Agency, NIHSA, in its 2020 annual flood outlook, has revealed that no fewer than 102 local government areas in 28 states are at risk of flood this year. This is as a result of a fallout from a devastating effect of the 2012 flood in the country. If you remember, just think back, throw your mind back a little to 2012, and it was when we had the heavy rains. And I remember the rains in Lagos were so heavy that the governor at the time actually asked Lagos state staff not to come to work. I think it was for 2 days or something. Lagos was almost underwater. So that has had a ripple effect, which we are feeling in 2020. Excuse me. The Director General of the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, Mr. Clement Nze, is joining us from our studio in Abuja and will be telling us more about this. Good morning, Mr. Nze.
Good morning and welcome.
You can hear you.
Yes, good. Yes, we're looking at something that happened in 2012. Can you please tell us more about that and how that is coming back to bite us in 2020?
The flood of 2012 remains the reference point, the benchmark. It was said to be, in some locations, what we call a 100-year return interval. Maybe in some locations, a 80-year return interval. That is to say, the period you expect such a kind of rain to take place, or the flood. But however, owing to the climate change, barely 6 years, in 2018, 2012 flood incident, almost took place. Only because what was short of it was that Cameroon didn't release water from Lagdo Dam. If they had done release of water in 2018, it could have been maybe worse than 2012 when they released the water from Lagdo Dam. Now, coming to 2020, like I said, 2012 remains a reference point. From our predictions for 2020, which was made public by the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adam, 2 days ago, what we are seeing is that the gravity of flooding in 2020 may not be like that of 2019. 2019 was a bit less than 2018. So we may not be expecting that kind of volume of devastation in 2020, but it is a prediction.
Okay, Mr. Nze, please just thank you. We'll take a moment and hear the Minister of Water Resources, and then we'll come back to continue the conversation. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have the Director General of the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, Mr. Clement Nze, with us. Mr. Nze, you did a comparison between what happened in 2012, up till 2019, and you said we may not have that amount of devastation in 2020, but you ended by saying it is still a prediction. In other words, it could change. What is the possibility that it could change? What is it that might happen to cause a change besides the release of a lacto jam?
Well, the following factors could cause that to change. One, the anthropogenic activities of man. Anthropogenic activities. Building or living structures within the floodplain. Not clearing the drainages that are filled up here and there. I think about 3 or 4 days ago, I saw a video clip of a flood at Onitsha. And it was so devastating. Some say it was 2012, I don't know, but I think it is recent. Structures, obstructed the flow of runoff. So if such things are not taken care of, and then climate change. For instance, the Meteorological Agency had made a prediction earlier in the year. They made it public on the 21st of January. Is weather dependent. The precipitation is weather dependent. That's the rainfall. Anything could happen in between. That's why each of the predicting agencies always try to be ahead of whatever is happening, to be monitoring the development and then be updating. So like I said, from our prediction, the flooding incident might not be as severe as 2019, but there could be pockets of devastation in some locations. And maybe such people may not have experienced it in 2019 or 18. It could occur to them this year. So these are the issues. But generally, globally, all over the country, what we are seeing is that it might not be as high as that, but it could be so localized in some areas with some heavy devastation.
You say that there might be occurrences in 102 local government areas in 28 states. And, well, some of the states are, Rivers, Cross River, Delta, Lagos, Ondo, Bayelsa, Sokoto, Kogi, Niger, Kaduna, Gombe, Adamawa, Benue, FCT, Nasarawa, Delta, Oyo, Ogun, Osun, Ekiti, Ebonyi, Edo, Abia, Anambra, Imo, Borno, Kano, and Kebbi. So how should these states prepare themselves just in case? Well, we hear you, we understand it's only a prediction, so it may not happen, but better be prepared, than to have regrets. So how should these states prepare themselves? Because the rains have come already.
Now, let me moderate that statement I made, that it is a prediction. It's not a guesswork. The prediction is based on real-time data of over 30 years, 40 years in some locations across the country. We measure all the major rivers in Nigeria. We know their behavior. Rivers Niger, Benue, Rima, Sokoto, Imo, Anambra, Ogun. We have measurements all over. River cross the entire country, we measure them. Some of them have kept readings on a daily basis for over 50 years. So it is the information gathered from these stations, the stage height, the discharge. These are some of the parameters we use in the prediction. So when I said it is a mere prediction, it doesn't mean that it was a guesswork. What must the states do? The Honorable Minister of Water Resources, who spoke a few minutes ago, had endorsed letters to each of the governors in Nigeria, to the Honorable Minister of the FCT, telling each of them the locations, the local government areas that are likely to be inundated by flood. And he urged them in that letter that had been dispatched to them, the thing they need to do. Enlightenment of the citizens, physically going around to remove structures that are within the floodplains or that are obstructing runoff in the cities. Like I saw some pictures where the governor of a Delta state was supervising construction of drainage works in Delta, clearing the drainages. I also observed where around February or so, before the COVID-19 took over the center space, where the Lagos state government going from one location to the other, looking at their systems, the art force that convey flood or rivers into the Atlantic that are blocked, they were at work. And when I spoke with one of them recently, they are still working. So we expect that each of the states that have been communicated with, all of them have been communicated with, to take action immediately by removing structures, by clearing their drainages, enlightening the people of what they should do. Usually between the months of July, August, September, what we call jazz months, this is the peak of flooding in Nigeria. However, it has begun already, especially in the southern part of Nigeria.
Okay. Sorry. Mr. Nze, NIMET told us earlier this year that we were likely to have more rainfall this year than last year. So are you implying, therefore, that even though we will have more rain, they will not be as heavy as last year and the year before?
If I recall properly, I was there at the launch by NIMET or NIMET. We spoke about the early onset of rainy season in the country. In other words, where it ought to have started maybe previously with going by records, say in the month of March, that it might become sometime in the month of May, or April rather, late onset. The rainfall is one of the input parameters we use in predicting of flood. I can name them. The geology of the environment, that's what is under the ground, whether it is rocky environment or sandy. The topography, the land use pattern, the river system. Then rainfall is a major input. So going by what we did, I mean our prediction, the work we did, what we have said is what we have seen. That it might not be as high as it was in 2019, not minding the prediction by NIMET in terms of having more rainfall in 2020.
Okay, first of all, when you talked about, I asked a question about what could bring about a change or that could shake or move away from that prediction. You talked about anthropogenic activities, blocked drains, and climate change. Climate change, yeah, tying on to if the rains that are coming late were going to increase. And climate change basically has become unpredictable and such. It's somewhat difficult to say exactly, okay, we might say the lanes will come in early and then they'll come late, or they will be heavy and they turn out not to be heavy because of the unpredictable nature of climate change. But that being said, these issues are such that sometimes the people are unaware. You said the government ought to educate the people, they ought to clean out the drains, and then even in their construction process, they also ensure that the drains are clean and all of that. But then, is the agency or is the federal government planning anything for these states that are likely to experience flood?
We have government at different levels, at least at 3 levels in Nigeria: federal, state, and the local governments. Each has a duty to do in securing life and property. The federal government is not everywhere, in a sense. The state government is closer, while the LGAs are closest to the people. Now, at our own end as an agency of federal government, ours is mainly advisory. We predict, we notify people, we warn them, we carry out a sensitization program going from one point to the other. But in the present circumstance we are now, COVID-19, we have devised other means to get the message down. So it is expected that each state government performs its own functions. Every state has Ministry of Environment. Every state has State Emergency Management Agency. Every state has an urban and regional planning department at the relevant agencies or Ministry of Government. What are those ones doing? Then also, we collaborate with other agencies of government like NOA. They are virtually in every local government area. So they are to help us at this level, having released the information, to try to cascade that information down to the grassroots. We cannot enforce as an agency any form of regulation by way of going to remove structures. There are relevant agencies of government at the state levels that can do such. It happened in Dave City during the era of El-Rufai. Okay. So many structures were removed. The state should be able to do such things in their locations.
If I may interrupt you here, that thing about what the government at different levels are doing brings to mind a particular thing that sometimes might be a problem. The monitoring of the different river basins across the country. What level of instrumentation and geospatial monitoring do we do to ensure that anytime there's going to be a situation, we are ready to go? And how do we improve or tie that data gotten from monitoring of the river basins, how do we tie that to the land use processes across the state?
Now, our agency has been carrying out what we call a flood vulnerability mapping of various areas in the country. We call it the hydrological area. The flood plain mapping of Nigeria is so that by the time you conclude it in some locations, like last year, we launched one in Port Harcourt, bringing together all the states within that hydrological area that we are mapped to show them the document. Every state government within this area was invited. It is expected of them to demonstrate it within their states. It will tell you the level, do I say encroachment you can, safe distance you can keep within the river banks. Or there are natural channels, even though there's no water in them, especially during the dry season, that are flood plains. Naturally, they are dry during the dry season, but they remain the pathways of flood. All these were documented, and they are available. We've done it in what we call Hydrological Area 1, Sokoto Basin. Within all the states that in those areas they have been done, it has been done. And they are available with the state governments. Theirs now is to implement it to ensure that the citizens are safe, especially during the rainy season. We saw what happened in Abuja last year. We know those settlements or the what do we call them? Where people, estates, people built houses. What happened there? Encroachment within the floodplains. So, like in Abuja, it's expected that the Development Control Department in FCT should be able to do something. I learned last year they might about 150 houses that must go. So how far that one has gone, I can't really say for now.
Okay, thank you for that. The other side of the question you didn't really look into is the monitoring of the river basins across the country and how that data can be integrated into the land use planning. Is that being worked out?
Now, we have 12 river basins in Nigeria, 12 river basins in Nigeria. Nigeria has a way that nature had divided it into. Now, the river basins carry out, among other duties, the measurement of rivers in their locations. And our agency also, being the main agency for hydrological activities in the country, we liaise with each of the river basins and even state water boards to collect data about the rivers that are being gauged in the country. And as an agency, this year, 2020, we were able to develop an app, what we call Flood Mobile App, which can give you at your fingertip, wherever you are, what you should be expecting all over the country. The whole of 774 local government areas in Nigeria are covered by that application. It is a mobile app, but we are trying to, get a little bit further, whereby those who cannot use the electronic devices can get the information just by ordinary text messages. It is expected that this data, this information we are reeling out every year should guide the states in the development of their locations. It's expected to be used. It's not a arbitrary figure that we are reeling out every year.
The question I asked is, how is that being worked out to integrate? Are the states using this data? Because apparently places that were flooded the previous year get flooded again the next year, and it's like a recurring decimal. So it looks as though data release is not being used by the different states. So what's the relationship like between your agency and the different states?
In fact, that is the crux of the matter. That what happened last year, repeating itself this year, what happened in 2018, happened in 2019. If I may put it this way, most of the states are not living up to expectation in terms of being proactive, in terms of utilizing data, being made available to them every year. It looks as if they are more comfortable with receiving, some funds, assistance after the flood has taken place, medicine after death. For instance, NEMA and other agencies. I know there's a committee we call Presidential Committee on Flood Relief and Rehabilitation, co-chaired by Alhaji Aliko Dangote and Chief Olisaba Koba. It was brought into effect in 2012 after the flood incident. Presidential Committee on Flood Relief and Rehabilitation. So most of the states seem to be waiting for damages to happen in their states occasioned by flood. And then the committee or other public spirited individuals will dole out money. Like I remember in 2012, states were categorized into A, B, C, D, up to E or so, depending on the severity. Some got 5 billion naira, some 4.5, 3 billion, 2 billion, depending on the severity of flooding and devastation. But at the end of the day, the real victims, most of them never even saw 1 naira. So they seem to be relying on relief materials that will be given to them at the end of the disaster. So the state should key into what we are speaking, what we are talking about. I will expect them to be inundating my agency with information, questions. Please, what is going to happen this year? I expect such a thing to be coming up. Anambra called many months or weeks ago. Enugu State called. Somebody, I think Osun State or thereabout, also called to find out what is going to happen in 2020. That's what we expect from all the states. Not to wait until there's devastation and then waiting for relief.
Mr. Clement Nze, thank you very much for intimating us of the flood outlook for 2020. Thank you. Mr. Clement Nze is the Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, and he joined us from our studio in Abuja. Well, Sunrise moves on, and we'll be back with another interesting conversation in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. We're looking at reproductive health in the midst of COVID-19. We're looking at the reproductive, mental, newborn, child health in this period. Mama, Papa, Uncle.
Papa, no, they were maternal. Thank you very much.
Well, Papa has to be there to support anyway.
Well, he does his own job before the reproductive stage arises. And his job is done thereafter.
Okay, well, Alera and I are having this conversation, but don't worry, somebody's here that will help clarify all of that. Well, he's the immediate past chairman of the Senate Committee on Health. Senator Dr. Olaiwaja Adeyemi Tejosho, a Nigerian politician, who was, as I said that earlier, immediate past chairman, Senate Committee on Health under the 8th Assembly. He represented Ogun Central, a consummate medical professional with specialty in telemedicine and medical computing. Tejosho was born in Abeokuta as a prince of a dynasty of His Royal Majesty Oba Dr. Adedakpo Tejosho. CON. I mean, if that, it's not you we are discussing today. We're discussing reproductive health. But if we're going to go into you, I'm sure we'll have the whole day and then we'll still not finish.
Even until COVID ends.
Until COVID ends. But also a part of the conversation is Dr. Sama Ibrahim Anas Kolo, who's a public health specialist and a fellow of the National Postgraduate Medical College, joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So just before we did the introduction, I'll stay with you. I'll start out with you and then come back here. Dr. Sama Kolo, Alera and I were going back and forth a little bit about when the papas come into discussing reproductive health. Are they really part of it? Alera says they are before. So help us clarify here before it comes to Dr. Tejosho. What do you have to say about that?
It's a collective responsibility. So everybody is part of reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child health. It's all about improving reproductive health, maternal health, child health, including adolescent health. And now we've even added care of the elderly as part of that comprehensive response. So it's a collective responsibility, and everybody is part of that responsibility. Nigerian government at the highest level has made that commitment, and that has also been decentralized up to the state government and also the local government level. So the approach now is to ensure that all partners and all stakeholders, individuals, key into that response to ensure that we improve the health of mothers, the health of children, and also our adolescents. That is the only way we can ensure development of Nigeria and guarantee our future.
It's very clear now. Okay.
But let me just finish it here. Since you brought in it's a collective responsibility in this situation that we are in now, the pandemic and all of that. How is that collective responsibility being carried out? Would you say it's wholesome?
Yeah, it is, because as you can see from the presidential level, we have the Presidential Task Force on the COVID response, and similar, it is also replicated at the state level. And then you can see that the role played by our private sectors in supporting, mobilizing resources, and participating. The same also at the community level. Our community key stakeholders, community leaders, traditional leaders are all involved in the response. So apart from the COVID response, which we are all focused in doing, what is most important also is to ensure that we sustain and ensure continuity of service delivery with respect to reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child health, including family planning services at all service delivery points. And when I said at all service delivery points, I meant at all levels of healthcare, be it tertiary facilities, secondary facilities, and also at the primary healthcare levels. And to that effect, you know, immediately when the first case was reported in Lagos, and since that time, it didn't take time, it started increasing. Within 2 weeks, it came to Abuja, and then started escalating to all parts of Nigeria, and almost all states of the Federation are now affected. So immediately, the Honorable Minister of Health, Professor Ihanire, Osagi Ihanire, immediately instructed, or rather directed, all health institutions, especially those that are under the Honorable Commissioners of Health at the state level, to ensure sustenance and continuity of service, because so that we are not at risk of diverting all health workers to focus on the COVID response. But RMNCH, that is reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child health, should be an integral part of the emergency COVID response nationwide. So this is the focus, and then this is the direction that we are driving at the moment.
Okay, Dr. Joshua, I am picking on the family planning part of this discussion. We're talking family planning in the period of COVID-19. It seems to be a contradiction in terms for me, because we're in a period of a lockdown most of the time, and families are forced to stay together. I use the word forced advisedly. They're forced to stay together, and part of the fun is making babies. And you're telling them to plan their families at this time. How so?
Well,
difficult task.
It's a difficult task. My colleague mentioned earlier that it's a collective effort. But most people, they focus on the woman instead of the man. The man is the source of the beginning of the process for reproductive success. Mm-hmm. And therefore, a lot of advocacy is needed to educate you on the best time to attempt to prepare for reproduction, and the best time when you don't want it to end up with babies. So a lot of advocacy needs to be done. Family planning is all about advocacy, first of all, and also provision of the commodities to ensure that you control the reproductive pattern or what you want to achieve. The problem is more in the rural areas and with the less educated individuals in the country. And we need to let them know the importance of contraceptives. In 2012, there was a meeting whereby they said the contraceptive prevalence rate of Nigeria should increase by 2% every year. Okay, that was in 2012. Then our contraceptive rate at that time was around 16% or so. So they expected that by now we should be around 36%. But unfortunately, it is something subject to funding. Our funding gaps have not been too encouraging. And so it's all about funding. And the parliament that I represent, we always ensure during my time that we appropriate enough money so that this family planning can be funded and we can have contraceptives, and also we can fund the people that are skilled enough to do the advocacy in the primary health centers.
In this situation where you have a reported $7 million funding gap in this year alone, how's that going to work out, even in the face of a revised 2020 budget?
For the purpose of the citizens, so I don't want to make it too complicated. But the issue is we have been enjoying the support of donor agencies like UNICEF, UNFPA, USAID, and so on. But they always give their conditions. And they will say, You bring $4 million, put it in the budget of Nigeria, then we will do the counterpart funding. When I was the chairman, Senate Committee on Health for Nigeria, I ensured in 2017, 2018, that we fulfilled our part. But it's one thing for the parliament to put it in the budget. It's another thing for the government to release the money. So the gap you are talking about is because of lack of release of the funds. If you look at the budget on paper, it looks good. But it's just the release of the funds at the end of the day that we need to ensure that we achieve. Look at the problem today now. We can see donations coming from everywhere. So now that COVID is on us, everybody is putting down money. It's all about money for health to advance. And we have already put this down on paper. We even went as far as making sure there was a law to ensure that we do not spend and don't get results. It's called the Basic Healthcare Provision Funding, which is in the 2014 Act of Nigeria today. But we have all these beautiful laws that we have done, but it's just implementation that is the issue. All this funding that we're having today, we already said it should go into one basket. Even the donors will be part of the oversight for that funding. We already said this money should go to all the primary health centers in the country. It's in that document. Okay, but again, we will start to prepare another law again, just when we have not even implemented the law since 2014 that we have introduced this.
You know, some would argue that the laws are there, but the National Assembly is not even looking or carrying out its own oversight effectively to see that those laws are implemented.
Yes, that was why.
So that sanctions, if you think that those who are supposed to implement are not implementing, you can sanction them. Are you not empowered to do that?
Well, I mean, we keep on summoning the people to implement, asking questions, but we can only keep on asking and keep on asking. But if they don't do it, it's left to the executives to do the needful and punish who's not performing.
Yeah, but Doctor, government is under a lot of pressure now regarding money because of what we find, the situation in which we find ourselves. So how is government now going to provide, fulfill its own part of the bargain, which you spoke about, before the agencies will put in their own counterpart funding?
Well, in those days when I was in the Senate, we defend our budget. Myself, as chairman health, I will defend the health sector of Nigeria. The defense chairman will come and defend his own budget. The education chairman will defend his own. I used to tell all of them that, look here, let us prioritize health. Because without good health, we won't have anyone to operate all these machines you want to buy, the defense equipment. Without health, the farmer will not go to work, agriculture. So why don't we just focus on health first and let it be 100% funding? This is 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So now today we find ourselves now putting everything into health. What we should have done 4 years ago. So it's a matter of priority. Thank God COVID came. When Ebola came that time, all of us were using sanitizers and everything. As soon as Ebola left, we dropped the ball. In fact, I now told the NCDC, we discussed at that time, when there was no COVID, and they even made me the ambassador for hand washing. We did an elaborate ceremony for hand washing. I was an ambassador 2 years ago, before COVID, for hand washing. We did a big ceremony. It was on television, was on paper. It was to ensure we encourage Nigerians to wash their hands. Imagine if that culture continued. Is it today we'll be telling people to wash their hands?
Let me take this to Dr. Salman Kolo. The federal government is about to launch a new family planning blueprint for the period of 2019 to 2023. In this phase of funding issues and implementations and all of that, why do you think we need such a blueprint? And would it be effective in changing the way things are?
The blueprint, the family planning blueprint, is still very relevant. And despite the COVID pandemic, I mean, it is non-stop. Just like Senator Tejoshua mentioned, we don't stop. we still have to continue, and the government is committed to ensure that we continue to implement, to launch the blueprint and also implement the blueprint. With respect to the commitment, I just want to mention and appreciate also Senator Tejuosho for the work he has done 2017-2018 that guaranteed the release of that funding at that time. So I also want to reassure Nigerians that the federal government is highly committed to ensure that those commitments are still met for 2019 and 2020. I knew that partly it was released in 2019, and the government is still committed to ensure that the remaining, the outstanding of 2019 is also going to be released. And I also want to assure Nigerians that as far as we know, the commitment for 2020 is still in the 2020 budget, even though with the revision, despite the COVID response, despite the need also to attract additional resources and funding, because we recognize the very importance of family planning. We also recognize the importance, or rather, if I may call it, child spacing, what the role it plays in reducing maternal deaths. Just like you introduced earlier and mentioned that we are going to expect, because of the lockdown, very increased number of pregnancies and likely deliveries. And we also recognize the burden that the COVID has also placed on the health sector. Prior to COVID, we are still struggling with the human resources, limited human resources in our health facilities. So we do recognize all that, but of course, we still continue to ensure that we continue to deliver services, and all commitments to family planning are also met, in addition to what we are also expecting from our donor. Despite all the commitment, we also recognize we still have a huge gaps of funding, which we are still advocating. And I am happy that Dr. Senator Tejuosho is playing an important role as a great advocate in resource mobilization. And we are stepping out of our usual way of doing business to also begin to attract funding from the private sectors, even for family planning from individuals. And at this, I would like to also seize the opportunity to also mention that, just like I said earlier, it's a collective responsibility. The state government also have to do more, more, because they have to do more in mobilizing and also ensuring, identifying budget lines for reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child, including procurement of contraceptives, because it's directly related to the saving of lives of women, saving of lives of children.
Thank you. Dr. Salma Ibrahim Anas Kolo is the Director of Family Health at the Federal Ministry of Health, and Senator Dr. Olarinwaju Adeyemi Tejuosho, a Nigerian politician who was the immediate past chairman of the Senate Committee on Health. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts with us. So nice, we'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. World Milk Day. Did you know that there was such a day? Well, it was initiated in 2001 by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, which actively encourages milk and dairy consumption as part of a daily diet. All aspects of milk are celebrated in many countries all over the world, and the number of countries and activities are increasing every year. Well, we have people here who will tell us exactly why we should be celebrating milk. We have Mr. Bartholomew Brai, who's the president of the Nutrition Society of Nigeria. Good morning. And we also have the nutrition manager over at Friesland Campina Wamco, Adedotun Owolabi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please tell us about World Milk Day. Why should we be celebrating, why should we set aside a day to celebrate milk?
Well, World Milk Day started in 2001. Actually, it was put in place by United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization because of the importance of milk, and then to encourage people to consume it. Not just milk, dairy products generally. And you notice that even as a baby, the first thing you take is milk. But when we continue to grow, we neglect this milk product. Meanwhile, it's a complete meal. It's rich in nutrients. And the fact that, look, this from agric, this agricultural product that people need for their proper nutrition and good health. So they decide that, oh, let's have a celebration. And that's why now you have several countries in the world who are celebrating it in one form or the other.
Okay. Now, Doctor, is there a theme for this year's celebration?
Yeah, indeed.
There
is a global theme for this year's celebration, and it's called Enjoy Dairy. So we are encouraging the world, nations around the world, to enjoy dairy.
So it's not just milk?
Not just milk. Okay. Of course, every other part of dairy also comes from milk. So milk is a source for all dairy products, most importantly. To add on to what Dr. Bryce said, it's important that we also know that about 1 billion people around the world depend directly on the dairy sector. About 600 million farmers around the world, and there are about 400 million people who work directly in the dairy manufacturing companies. So indeed, dairy has a lot to show, a lot to give. It's one of the greatest gifts of nature to mankind. And so it's worth celebrating, actually. And in addition, for us as Friesland Campaign as an organization, for us, we had the pioneer of dairy development program in Nigeria. It is an opportunity for us to showcase and spread the message of our grass to glass, made by nature, and then we make it by science. Okay, nature brought it, and then we are using science to bring it to the table of everybody. And so this is what we are passing across to say there's a lot of benefits, nutritional benefits of dairy for everybody. So it's important that you drink milk.
Important you drink milk.
Yeah.
No.
At any time of the day.
Anytime.
Any time of the day.
Oh, okay.
But you stress breakfast as well, don't you?
Yes, we stress breakfast, and I can put a little light on that, indeed.
Okay.
Enjoy a peak breakfast.
Enjoy a peak breakfast.
So why do you stress breakfast?
Yeah, because we discovered also that breakfast is one of the meals of the day that is usually left out. I mean, a lot of time we deliberately or mistakenly leave out breakfast because of hustling and bustling of Lagos and Nigeria. We always want to get out of the house very early, and then before you know it, we already skip breakfast. But breakfast is actually the most important meal of the day.
Really?
And a lot of times, the morning determines the day. So if you do not have a healthy breakfast in the morning, you'll probably...
So you're implying that milk in your breakfast makes it healthier?
Make it healthier, exactly.
But
At any age?
At any age.
At any age. Dr. Bry, you would have to explain this. How does milk in my breakfast make it healthier? And then, okay, and go on with that.
Well, let's come back to our homes. We are Nigerians, we are Africans. Someone will wake up, boil beans, and then eat it just like that. Or someone boils yam, maybe oil. Those who have enough money, maybe they'll fry egg or use stew. Well, in that process, many people get what we call macronutrients. That is the major nutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. But they miss out on the micronutrients, that is the vitamins and minerals, which are very important for our healthy living. We will look at the milk you add to your breakfast. It's a good complement. It's a very rich complement because it has rich, milk itself is rich in nutrients. Yes, it also has proteins, carbohydrates, and a little of fat, but you have natural vitamins and minerals. The B vitamins, they are there. And not only that, for the manufacturers like Big Pig, they have gone ahead to fortify the milk with vitamin A and vitamin D. And these are very important vitamins when it comes to our immune functions.
Okay. But what happens to those who are lactose intolerant? Lactose
intolerant. The proportion is usually very small. If you are lactose intolerant, well, the advice is that you are advised not to take milk. But good enough. The dairy companies are also producing some dairy for lactose intolerant human beings. But that problem is not a major problem in Nigeria. Okay. There are some, but it's not a major problem.
Okay. Doctor, how beneficial is milk in one's diet? I know that when you are, well, of course, when you are a baby, that is your wholesome food.
Yeah.
And even as you grow older, a glass of milk a day. But as you grow into adolescence, go to tertiary institution, you tend to cut out milk. But I know that you all are carrying out a campaign saying that at whatever age, a glass of milk is still a good thing for your body. Why is that? How beneficial is it to me to be drinking milk at my age?
Yeah. So I can also use an illustration to explain that. I once had a discussion, and the medical doctor said he doesn't think an adult should take milk, an elderly person. And I said, why? And I said, because they need fat, they need calcium to maintain their bone, they need phosphorus, they need some of these nutrients. But where do you get them? You get them from milk. So as you grow older, indeed, we deviate from taking milk, but it's actually not the right thing to do. It's not the right culture to do. We all need milk because these important nutrients are not found in major foods. Let me tell you, you need about 400 grams of broccoli to equate the calcium you get from 1 glass of milk. So imagine you are taking a whole bowl of, or a whole basket of broccoli or from vegetables in order to be able to equate the calcium you get in that vegetable to the one you get in 1 cup of milk. So the milk contains numerous amounts of nutrients that helps us to grow and develop, and also for immunity. Indeed, what you see is that, let me give an example. You are expected to have an average moderately active person needs about 68 grams of protein every day. And you're expected to spread the 68 grams of protein every day in 3 places: in the morning, at night, in the afternoon, and at night. And what you see is that in the morning, as a matter of fact, you struggle to get the 25 in the morning because you take a look at, you're eating yam, you're eating bread, you're eating akamu without any other thing. You need some other sources of protein to make up that 25. And that is actually what it's called healthy diet, healthy breakfast.
How much can I get from a glass of milk?
From a glass of milk, you have about 9 grams of protein.
Only 9?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a
that is high.
You said that's high?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
sorry?
That's from one food item.
So,
other components of the meal, we also provide
exactly.
more protein.
I see there are other components. Imagine I'm taking a glass of milk and 2 slices of bread. How many grams of protein do I get from just 9?
Well, the truth is that your breakfast should be the richest meal of the day.
And so now we've agreed that a glass of milk, thank you, a glass of milk is just 9. Then how else do I make up the 25 grams I'm supposed to get that morning in a breakfast of a slice of bread, maybe peanut butter, give me a little bit of more protein, right?
Yeah.
And so
that is why we emphasize
an egg.
Healthy diet. That's why we emphasize.
So imagine you don't have dairy in your breakfast. Remove the 9.
Okay.
We'll be left with nothing.
How many do I need for a day?
You need 68.
About 68.
Wow, that's a
68, morning 25, and then you break
22
that.
and 20.
Okay, afternoon you'll have fish or meat with your lunch.
Yeah, exactly, something like that.
Okay, so if I do my 9 with a glass of milk, maybe after breakfast I now take a bar of chocolate. How many grams do I get from a bar of chocolate?
Carbohydrates and fats.
No, Dr. Seriously, how many do I get from a bar of chocolate?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of chocolate. It depends on but of course, there's a lot of sugar in chocolate.
Yeah.
But there's milk in it as well.
Yeah, of course, there's milk in it as well. But indeed, what I would probably recommend is take a glass of milk in the morning, together with your other sources of protein. It could be egg, could be
beans, could be
beans. The whole. But the important thing is that why you need milk is also because milk contains what we call complete amino acid. So it contains essential amino acids. So the protein in milk is easily absorbable in the bloodstream. If you eat beans, beans is from plants, you are not sure or not likely to have the biological availability of the protein you have
So
in
it has to go
beans.
through a breaking process.
Exactly, and you may not have everything that you eat. But in milk, you have everything that you eat. You have the 9 grams in your bloodstream, and it's really going to work for you. But from plant sources, you don't have all of that.
And then those amino acids you mentioned are very important in building immunity. Because in production of antibodies, you need those essential amino acids. That's why we need to have milk in our diets.
Okay.
Okay, so I get my 9 from a glass of milk in the morning. I add a little bit more from the egg I put on my bread. Well, he will add peanut butter to his own. So he's now got what, about what, 15?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so afternoon comes along. I don't snack. Afternoon comes along. I have rice and I have a piece of chicken. How many can I get from that?
Yeah, it also
Portion
depends.
size.
I get the drumstick. I get the drumstick.
It depends on the portion size.
You know, fair size 1.8 kg chicken, and I'm eating the drumstick.
1.8 kg. I don't know what the drumstick will give us in terms of weight.
Approximately.
But I'm not into sales of chicken. I don't know what that portion will actually weigh.
Okay, but all you are saying is that I should have a glass of milk in the morning, have a glass of milk in the afternoon, have a glass of milk in the evening.
But
not so.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, but what about the sedative effects of milk? As you say, you want to calm down, take a glass of milk.
So indeed, let me continue from where Dr. Bryce started. Okay, so indeed, it helps in weight management, especially because it sustains you for a longer period. And it helps you to manage your intake. So you don't just sit and keep eating over and over again because milk is filling. Okay, so what you see nowadays is that we don't take breakfast. We then move to lunch and we take a very big bowl of rice or whatever it is that we don't even need. You probably just need a few amount of calories, but you are already eating 2 days' calories in a lunch. And at night, you do the same thing. Yeah, but if you include dairy as part of your breakfast, what it does for you is it helps you to stay longer, fuller for longer, and then you can really spread your other meals across the day. And then in such a way, you find out that people who drink more milk in the breakfast, during breakfast and across the day, have very good weight management. Yeah.
We also learned that milk is very good for your teeth.
Yeah, indeed.
How true is that?
Calcium.
Calcium.
And phosphorus.
And phosphorus. And the presence of vitamin D, which helps which helps the absorption. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up vitamin D. They say that black people don't get enough vitamin D, even though we have the sun, and the sun is hot. How true is that?
It is true, because of the color of our skin. It's dark. Light does not, the sun, the UV rays do not penetrate as much as it does to a white skin. So we'll not be able to manufacture as much as a white-skinned person will do. So I think that is part of the problem the blacks are having in Europe and America right now. They don't have enough vitamin D.
So they have to do supplements.
Yeah, they have to do supplements.
Or they should be drinking more milk.
No. Well, milk is part of it. Milk is part of it, but to be able to meet up with the requirements, they will need supplements. Not only the blacks over there, even the elderly people. You know, as we grow older, the level of vitamin D and other nutrients will continue to depreciate. So the advice is that to take supplement for vitamin D, and then with your milk, with your vitamin D, if you're able to take liver and all those oily fish, it will also help. Because now we measure nutrients, people talk about all sorts of things when it comes to COVID-19. But the one nutrient that has been seen to play a role at a particular point is vitamin D, because it stops the replication of the virus. So those who are dying, from what they are saying again, vitamin D has
They were deficient.
Or the lack thereof.
The lack thereof. Insufficient vitamin D, which will compromise their immune system.
Wow. This is becoming very interesting.
Very interesting. Okay, so Dr. just before we let you go, what would be the word you say to those who think milk is expensive, and how do they make up for all of this?
Thank you. A lot of times what you see is that we spend so much at the end of the day when we are now sick. We spend a lot of money to buy drugs and all of that. And a great philosopher once said, let your food be your medicine, and not medicine, not your food. So importantly, it is actually important that we spend on nutrition to be healthy. If you spend on nutrition, you will fall sick. You will fall sick less, and then you can focus attention more on important things of life. Indeed, I think I would think dairy products or milk products are not that expensive. And then you have them in small sachets, so people who cannot afford the big pouches can go for the small sachets.
Okay, the two questions here for you, real quick, and you answer this other one. Medupin Babatunde says, Medupin Babatunde, I hope I pronounce that name well, says, animal protein or plant protein? I have a bias for plant protein. After all, the animals get their protein from the same plant. Never seen an ox or cow get its protein from an animal. Now says, does Friesland have any soy milk products?
No, we get all our animal sources from cow.
All your
all the milk products are
from cow. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's for Babatunde.
Oh, Festus Akimboyowa. Too much milk increases the chances of getting cancer.
Did they validate it?
Is there scientific evidence?
Festus.
I'm not.
Our guests don't have any scientific evidence, to
what is the link? What is the link between milk and cancer?
Back to cheese. Is cheese good for us?
Who is the us?
Human beings.
Of course. It's part of the dairy family. I know one challenge we have in this part of the world is that we don't take dairy products as such. We manage to take a little milk, but yogurt is coming up. Cheese is not there, just because some of us are delighted we will talk about it at all.
Okay.
It's a good product.
Okay. Oh, very interesting conversation indeed we've just had with Adedotun Owolabi, who's Nutrition Manager, Friesland Campina WAMCO, and Dr. Bartholomew Brai, President, Nutrition Society of Nigeria. And it was all about World Milk Day. And I think we have said all that can possibly be said about milk. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
And happy World Milk Day.
Happy World Milk Day.
Happy World Milk Day. Go drink some milk.
Yeah. Okay. So Sunrise will be right back with the home stretch. Do stay with us.
And that is Demilade Adegbeba, who is popularly known as the Bold One, a child saxophonist who came into limelight at the BJ Sax concert in 2008. He is 11 years old and has performed for notable gigs, and today he's our Artist of the Week. Demilade, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to see you.
It's not possible. It can't be 2008.
2018, right?
18.
2018.
Yeah. He's 11.
Demilade. So how did you, okay, sorry.
There are too many questions. You don't know where to start.
Okay, did you start out with the sax?
No, I started with keyboard at the age of 6. So when I was 7, I was going to church with my mom, choir rehearsals. I just saw the sax, and I told my dad to buy it for me, and he bought it for me as my birthday gift.
No.
You just saw the sax.
Tell me about that moment when you saw the sax on your birthday.
I just saw the sax. I was like, wow. With all the fingers moving and the sax, I really loved it.
You saw someone playing the sax?
Yes.
Okay. So when your dad gave it to you, what did you feel like?
I was so happy that day. I didn't even sleep. To the extent that when my daddy was going out the next day, he had to keep it.
But he slept on the bed with you that night, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't even sleep.
Oh, you couldn't sleep anyway, so...
But you didn't know how to play, so
I
what
was just playing something.
Okay. So, did you now forget the keyboard and focused on the sax?
No, I learned it two at the same time because the keyboard is the grandfather of all instruments. It made me understand more on the sax. It made this more easier.
So can you read music?
Yes.
So if somebody brought you a sheet of paper now and put it in front of you, you can read and play on the sax?
Yes.
I'm actually tempted to open a score sheet here and then let you play. But, okay, so now you started playing the sax. What has it been like for you? Can you describe the difference you feel, moving to the sax?
Yeah, it was okay. It was not really hard that much because the keyboard gave me edge on the sax. So when I started, I already knew some things because I was ready to play the major scales already.
So how do you juggle, because see the way you're even holding the sax, you're in love with this thing, aren't you?
Yeah.
So how do you juggle playing with this love of your life and your schoolwork?
Yeah, when I go to school, I draw the line. When I go to school, I focus on school, nothing else. So when I get home, I don't...
I want to believe you, but I'm finding it very hard.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You focus on school and you forget about the sax?
Yeah.
Until you get home?
Yes.
What about homework?
Yeah, I do my homework. After the homework, I just quickly run through the saxophone for like 5 minutes.
What does mommy have to say about that?
And mommy is very, very supportive. And when I'm doing something bad, she tells me. I really love my mom.
Of course,
Okay.
boys love their moms.
And daddy too. Okay, then we'll take a moment. When we come back, I found one sheet music. You'll open up with it, and then let's take it up from there. Okay?
Okay.
We're back in a moment. Please stay with us. For you and for me and the entire human race.
You certainly are a Michael Jackson fan.
Yeah.
The first one was Michael Jackson. This one is Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, you have shared the stage with people like B.J. Sachs, Nathaniel Bassey, people that we only hear about. What was that experience like for you? These are very famous people.
Well, I was very, very happy. Yeah, they were really, really supportive because they really like it. When they do things like this, they're really, really happy. So, anytime
And they always want you to be there.
Yeah.
But how are you able to combine this and your schoolwork?
Yes, I draw the line. And when I'm in school, I don't focus on music at all. It's as if I don't even know music. I just focus, I read my books. When I get home, I do my assignments and briefly run to the sax just do some skills and all that. So on the weekends, I wake up, do my house chores, then I really rehearse.
Do you want to be a musician when you grow up?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 2 siblings, my sister and my brother.
Older or younger?
Younger.
Younger. Are they also into
the
music?
number one.
Yes.
Are they also into music too?
Yeah, my brother plays the keyboard. My sister sings.
Sings.
Okay,
Well, full complement.
so sometimes you play for them too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are your plans? What do you look at doing beyond now?
I just look at mastering my craft, becoming better on the saxophone.
Who are your models? Who are the people that you're looking at?
Yeah. I have a lot of mentors. I listen to different people. I'd just like to mention a few like BJ Sachs,
Of course.
Makaremu,
Ah.
Jeremole, and my teacher that started teaching me from scratch, DJ Sachs Oliola.
DJ Sax.
DJ Sachs.
Jide Sax. He's your teacher.
Yeah. He taught me the keyboard, he taught me the sax till now.
Till now. So, okay, so see what we're going to do. We're going to sign out the program, but we will let you tell our audience what you expect of them to do. No matter what the challenge is, this is a COVID-19 period. You've been at home. You know, we heard you playing something earlier about being happy no matter what. So we'll sign out and then we'll let you do your thing with your sax. Is that okay?
Okay.
If you want to stand, you can stand and do it. You don't have to sit to do that. Okay?
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, so that's where we draw the curtain on today's Sunrise. We'll be with you again with a fresh edition next week. I'm Alero Edu. So see you next month.
And I'm Nell Tagbe. Thank you for letting us be a part of your morning. Remember, be the best you can be. You can also be your neighbor's answer to prayers. Just let's be good to each other and think beyond ourselves. See you again next week. We leave you with Demilade, the saxophonist, the bold one.